Hi, my name is Phil Wason, and this is the second video in a series on facilitation in practice. And I think I said in the first session that I really wanted to look, before we get in the workshop, before we get in the training room, before we even start the first event where I'm facilitating, we need to spend a little bit of time thinking about my role as a consultant, someone who's been brought in, someone who's being consulted. And how am I going to go about this? What's the purpose of this piece of work that I'm being invited in to do? And so I want to just spend a few moments looking at some parts of the consultancy cycle. You could look at it very simply, and it is very simple to conceptualize, but there are many slips that people make as they go around the consultancy cycle. The first point is to establish contact, to gain entry. And the way you do that's very important, so that you build rapport clearly. But once you've gained entry, it's about asking the question, what's this about? What's the purpose of this? What's the problem? And how did it come about? What's happened already? What's been tried already? Who is it for? And when you're asking these questions, it's important to get as much information from as many people as you can. So the client, the manager who's invited you in, may well have their perspective. Sometimes it's important to say, who else could I ask about this? What other perspectives will there be? What other opinions are going to impinge on the planning of this event? And what other perspectives do I need to bear in mind? So as I'm gathering all this information, I'm beginning to form options together with the client. It has to be in agreement with the person who's invited you in, beginning to generate some options for the ways forward, and beginning to ask, well, if that's an option, who would deliver that? Do you even need me for that? Is that something where actually it'd be better if you did it, or those two key people sorted that out? It's not always down to me, but sometimes in my eagerness to have the work, sometimes in my eagerness to be significant, I'll grab a piece of work, but actually there's failure ahead because it's not appropriate for me. It's much better for the organization or the group to do that themselves. So once you've decided on the option, on the way ahead, who's going to be involved, you need to do some decision making, some planning, some designing, and then implement. And following the implementation, then there will be some form of evaluation and disengagement. Seems quite straightforward, really. However, the problems come at that very early stage of contracting. Having gained entry, when you're asking the questions, what's this about? What's the problem? Who's it for? Then sometimes contracting with the client, contracting with the manager, can be a problem, because the presented problem might not be the real problem. But you might not discover this until you're partway through session one. So for example, the manager may have said, it's all about them. They've got this problem, or that person has got this problem. They're resistant to change. Their performance is poor, or they've got personality clashes. And then when you're in session one, and you're spending time with the group of people that you've been invited to work with, you start to realize, as you go deeper, you start to realize what the problem really is. You start to see why the manager has said those things. They may well be absolutely right in their assessment, but it may be that it's something to do with them. And it may be that when they were describing the situation to you, they were actually coming from a place of their own fears, their own pressures, their own relationship with their boss and the expectations they may have of this group. It may be because of a lack of clarity over job descriptions and performance targets, or whatever it is. And so it may well be after session one that you then have to recontract with the manager, with the client, and say, actually, I'm not so sure this is a path that's going to be as fruitful as if we go this way. So it's about re-agreeing again what the real purpose is based on our reassessment of the problem. And that might be quite difficult for you, because you're going to have to confront the manager, the client, with some home truths, with some difficulties you've discovered, with some points of view that they may not have listened to before, they may not have heard, they may not have been aware of. So we will be looking at in a future video, at the skills involved in asking those kinds of probing questions and in influencing and in negotiating ways forward without being rude or intrusive. It's about generating a genuine inquisitiveness about the situation and about people that will really stand you in good stead right through the whole process of being a consultant and or a facilitator. Who else can I talk with? Is a good question. I often find it useful to get a range of perspectives before we start, for example. Or maybe just things like, I noticed earlier you said, and just reflecting back, and maybe some inconsistencies in what's been said. And so you may not have time to do that before session one with as a facilitator. So it may be, as I say, after the first session that you then have to go back and do this recontracting so that the way ahead is smoother. If you only have one session, then I would really recommend you try and ask those questions and meet the participants, even if it's just a sample, in advance, and get as many perspectives as possible so that you can recontract and make this job doable. But sometimes in my eagerness to take on the work, I'll dive in and simply take everything that's said at face value and then feel frustrated because we've had a difficult day, because there's a kind of cognitive dissonance between what you think you're there for and what they think they're there for, what you've been told the problem is and what they think the problem is. And if we don't do that, we really face some ethical dilemmas as a facilitator. Who is my client? I thought it was the person who asked me to come in and do this work, but now I have empathy with this group of people and it feels like they're my clients. What is the outcome that's going to be good from this? Is it what the client who's paying my money, my wages, is it what they wanted? Or is it what this group of people really need? What about my authority? Does it look like I've been sent here as a messenger boy, in my case, to sort this lot out, when actually it's the manager's lack of confidence and competence in performance management, and maybe they need some coaching in that? Do people think I'm there just to check up on them and then report back? Have I actually been asked to report back to the manager, to the client? And if that's the case, then how do I feel about that ethically? So all of those suspicions, all of those ethical dilemmas are issues I need to face in advance. And if I don't, then questions of sustainability start to be raised. Because what I really want to do in my role as a facilitator is for this group to be independent of me eventually, for the future to be sustainable, for them to be able to be more effective as a group. And that's where they'll really be able to thank you and say, that really helped us, rather than just continuing to plow through with the same problems. So I would encourage you to dedicate as much time as you're allowed, as much notice as you're given, to explore these issues before you get into the facilitation in the room, and work your way through these early stages of the consultancy cycle. I'm sure we'll pick up on this again before we're finished. Look forward to seeing you in the next video.